Welcome now to our fifth video out of the 6 short videos on the 6-point pattern of the Aristotelians. Here's point 5 of that pattern. A fantasy reward for submission and following the rules. Hana is in the picture is paradise for the afterlife, as an example. If you submit and follow the rules and commands, here are some of the fantasy rewards. From Jesus, your reward is in heaven. From the Quran, we have, say to them, the home of the hereafter with Allah is indeed for you. More from the Quran, therein they shall have purified mates or wives. And another from the Quran, in this life of the world is only an amusement and a play. Verily the home of the hereafter, that is the life indeed, i.e. the eternal life that will never end. From Karl Marx, we have these fantasy rewards. 1, they seek to restore by force the vanished status of the workmen of the Middle Ages. And the second one, from each according to his ability, to each according to his needs. What we have here is after the Communist Revolution, we will return to the glory days of the Middle Ages. Now this is some kind of pre-industrial Garden of Eden, heaven on earth for Marx, and everyone will somehow just get what they need. This is clearly irrational. Why would anyone want to go back to the misery of the Christian Middle Ages? Hitler's fantasy reward for a submission to his commands. He states the premise for the formation of a higher human culture, which lies exclusively in the existence of a race capable of culture. He also says human culture and civilization on this continent are inseparably bound up with the presence of the Aryan. And he concludes, and so the folkish philosophy of life corresponds to the innermost will of nature. It must lead to a continuous, higher, mutual breeding, until at last the best of humanity, having achieved possession of this earth, will have a free path for activity. Hitler's need to focus on higher breeding of the Aryan race to achieve the best of humanity, human culture, and civilization. This is another mystic of muscle, Garden of Eden fantasy. And now point 6 of the anti-Aristotelian pattern, the initiation of force against those who don't follow the rules and commands of their anti-reason program. And we have pictured here the tragic example of Galileo, punished by the Christian Church for his pro-reason, pro-science views. More on that shortly. At this point, it is critical to identify the fundamental difference between a pro-reason view of politics versus that of the anti-Aristotelians. Quote, the basic political principle of the objectivist ethics is no man may initiate the use of physical force against others. No man, or group, or society, or government has the right to assume the role of a criminal and initiate the use of physical compulsion against any man. We have another quote from Ayn Rand. When men abandon reason, physical force becomes their only means of dealing with one another and of settling disagreements. From Dr. Leonard Peikoff, we have force is the antonym and negation of thought. The mind is a cognitive faculty. It cannot achieve knowledge or conviction apart from or against its perception of reality. It cannot be forced. And now we begin to see in history those exact ideas. What happens when reason is abandoned? Galileo declared that the investigations of physics, whatever their result might be, had not the least thing to do with the teaching of the Bible. For bringing to the stage the battle between science and reason against revelation and faith, Galileo was imprisoned by the Inquisition around the age of 70. In a Vatican prison, he spent close to 10 years where he went blind. He was able to go home with his daughter for the last few remaining years of his life. Let's take a minute and review the Galileo affair in more detail, because this is a great historical example involving all of the concepts we've reviewed today. Galileo used his senses, that is, his consciousness, to become aware of objects in the sky. Because he had volition, he chose to think. He developed the telescope to magnify his senses. Because he had a conceptual faculty, he identified individual objects as first-level concepts: Mars, the sun, the moon, and so on. Because he had a conceptual faculty, he identified second-level concepts. He distinguished planets from stars from moons. Because he had the faculty of logic, he was able to integrate what he observed and create new ideas of the causes of the actions of those objects. Galileo declared, based upon his faculty of reason, that the planets, including Earth, revolved around the sun. He did this because he was motivated by love and not by fear. He gained both existential and psychological values. He was paid as a professor, and he earned pride and happiness through his achievements. But because he did not give up reason, did not adopt the arbitrary, he did not subject himself to an alleged greater consciousness, did not follow the commands and rules of the church, and he put reason above mysticism, the Christian Church Inquisition initiated force against Galileo. I hope this demonstrates to you concretely and in an integrated manner the evil of the anti-Aristotelians and the six-point pattern. For his views on reason, John Locke, the father of the Aristotelian Enlightenment, had to flee England for his safety. In the 1600s, Christian theocratic colonies, laws forced people to obey the Sabbath and to go to church. Laws restricted speech. They inflicted severe punishment upon violators through the use of stockades, public whippings, and brandings. The colonies, pre-revolution, pre-founding fathers, were a Christian theocracy. Capital offenses in Plymouth, Massachusetts, all citizens were forced to support the state religion. Punishments varied from fines to confinement in cages or stockades to whipping and even branding. In rare cases, some were burned alive or hung alive in chains. From the Quran, we have, quote, al-jihad, holy fighting in Allah's cause with full force of numbers and weaponry is given the utmost importance in Islam and is one of its pillars on which it stands. Jihad is an obligatory duty in Islam on every Muslim. Again from the Quran, to fight against the people till they testify that no one has the right to be worshipped but Allah. We have more. We first send a definite order to obey Allah and to be righteous. Then they transgress therein, and thus the word of torment is justified against them. Then we destroy them with complete destruction. And lastly, thus you are ordered by Allah to continue in carrying out jihad against the disbelievers. When you go against the ideas of Marx and his wage laborers, they destroy imported wares that compete with their labor. They smash machinery to pieces. They set factories ablaze. They seek to restore by force the vanished status of the workman of the Middle Ages. They call for the violent overthrow of the bourgeoisie. And Marx says that this person, the individual, the bourgeoisie, must indeed be swept out of the way and made impossible. Adolf Hitler on the use of force for those who oppose his ideas. This spiritual platform, he says, must, if necessary, be secured by strong-armed means. Also, if finally popularity, force, and tradition combine, an authority may be regarded as unshakable. And his essay, his storm detachment, its goal, to train it as a guard, numbering hundreds of thousands of men for the National Socialist and hence profoundly folkish idea. So we see a lot of irrational and thus immoral patterns coming from the anti-Aristotelians. But we have an antidote, and it is Aristotelian reason. And that antidote must have not only the personal context, but a social context in order to protect individuals from the initiation of force of the anti-Aristotelians. And that social structure is capitalism, which is, you can see on your screen right now, the definition.